Hi everyone, and welcome to another fabulous live feed with Tony and Nathan, whom I will bring on in just a moment. This is going to be one of those lively conversations, hopefully, about all things that are of importance to all of us. And I'm hoping that many of you feel free to have a conversation with us about these particular issues, because there's a number of things Nathan and I plan to talk about today. One of them is this terrible war in the Middle East, how it will impact us, whether or not it was legitimate or not. And the question I'm asking in our poll is, are we heading for a forever war? And I have 11 votes right at this moment, and 64% say yes, 36% say no. So we're kind of split on this one, and I'd really be interested to know why you think it will not be a forever war. What is it that makes this different from other wars such as Iraq and Afghanistan and Vietnam, places where the Americans have decided to embarrass themselves ultimately and where they haven't been able to win any of their wars ever anyway? So since World War II, for which the Americans think they actually contributed to the winning of that war, even though I just keep reminding everybody they didn't enter it until Pearl Harbor was bombed. So it took them a number of years. They are just a bunch of friggin' cowards, let's face it. And are they demonstrating their cowardice right now through the coward-in-chief, Donald Trump? That is the question that we should be asking ourselves. We're also going to be having a look at One Nation and where they sit in this country. We're going to have a conversation about the South Australian election and what that looks like for those people that are interested in what's happening here. But it has an overtone that will play out around Australia as well, particularly in relation to where One Nation sits, the power that they have, the influence that they do or they don't have, and what the polls are specifically telling us at this particular point in time. So after that ramble, just remember, and I must say this, please remember to subscribe to my channel. And if you're watching this, I've hopefully sent it to Nathan's channel as well, which he will talk about in just a moment. Please go to his channel, subscribe to his channel. And Nathan gives the most wonderful insights into policies. He is far more in depth than I am around all of those issues. And it's very informative. If you want the nitty-gritty about certain policies like NDIS and so forth, please go to his channel and have a look. And he can talk about that in just a moment. But in the meantime, make sure that you subscribe to my channel and also to Nathan's. That would be great. So, welcome aboard, Nathan.
Hello, Tony. Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here again and talk about everything that's been going on in the world, because, it doesn't sound like much is going on. So
no, it's
where do we start?
It's pretty quiet right at the moment.
Yeah.
It just makes you sort of wonder about, waking up in the morning and breathing that first breath and thinking, well, thank God for that. I still have one first breath to breathe. The world has not been destroyed. I'm still, when you're my age, that's a blessing, believe me. So tell us a little bit, Nathan. We're planning to do a live feed on the election day. Tell us a little bit about your site. Get some people excited about that. Please register with Nathan. Sign up for we've got a number of people online at the moment. We've got 39, so that's a real good start for the first few minutes. But this is going to be an interesting conversation. So Nathan, just tell us a little bit about where you're at.
Yeah, my name's Nathan. My YouTube channel is called The Rightist Leftist. I'm sort of from the broad left-wing church. I'm not a member of a party at the moment. I'm an independent, but my channel is basically, my profession is in psychology. So I look at, I do deep dives on policy. I come from that sort of psychological perspective of looking at how people make decisions about which parties to vote for or about which policies to support, and the reasons why people support certain policies. So it's a little bit longer form, as you were saying, Tony. And I've been doing it for nearly a year. I've nearly hit 1,000 subscribers, which is the first pretty big milestone. But yeah, I love doing it. I post 1 or 2 videos a week just because it's not a job yet for me. It's just a side hustle that I do for fun, and these live streams as well when I can. So Yeah, that's me. I really like talking about politics, and I think I do learn a lot from you, Tony, because yeah, we both have very similar political views, but very different perspectives, and we're from different states. I'm from Victoria, you being from South Australia, so we have different sort of bases of knowledge that we can, and probably different audience demographics. And so us coming together, I hope that provides a bit of that overlap, and our audiences discover each other when we build that broader infrastructure on YouTube for people who like this kind of content.
Spot on. And that's exactly what we're doing. And there's a number of people who are popping up their comments right now. And we just encourage all of you to comment, have a conversation amongst yourselves. As we're talking, I will do my best to pick up comments that are relevant. This is, after all, about your opportunity to have a conversation with us and with each other. It's about a community. And I must say, I was just saying to Nathan before we went on air that that there's a wonderful connection I've discovered, and I think you two have, Nathan, as well, with the intellectual capacity of the people that come online. Oh, and I'm talking about 99% of them. There's that 1% that just throws a spanner in the works. But generally, people have got a great understanding, I think, about the world, politics in general, and we do ask everybody to be respectful of each other as well. The writer's left us interesting political position, says John. So thanks for that, John. He's an advocate of yours, so that's very, very,
Thanks, John.
very pleasing. I'll just pop that up so that we can see it if we can.
Yeah.
I did. I got confused. I've got too many buttons in front of me. I think the writer's left us interesting political position, and it is, and it's certainly.
What does it mean? That's the question. Yeah.
well, you can explain that. What does it mean?
Oh, it was like I just needed a way to separate my psychology from the politics. So I needed kind of a nickname. The kind of joke, write in like the most correct, a bit of a snarky title. Also, my intention isn't to be, even though it's, it says rightist and leftist, it's looking at policy. So I feel like when that name comes up on people's feeds, it sort of spikes that curiosity and they want to go in. And instead of getting like outrage content, which I hate, they get, deep dives on policy, and hopefully they stay for that. I don't control if they do or not, but yeah, it's sort of designed to be a little bit thought provoking, to be like, oh, what is a rightist leftist? Like that question is itself kind of the point. I'm definitely more on the left with most of my views, but again, there are some right ideas I agree with. But yeah, we can get to that.
We can, because I'm kind of interested to figure out what they are. Someone has commented here, and this is kind of like, can I just suggest to people to hit the thanks button, send us some money for a cup of coffee as well, if you wouldn't mind. We really do appreciate it, and it helps us to get paid for whatever we're doing. Because I can tell you right now, YouTube are miserable at paying you for your videos. They are. It's a shocker, but you have to work at it, which is what we're doing. So just wanted to come to one of the, if I bring this one up, I think Iran is clever in their strategy. Saudi Arabia have conferred with America to attack Iran. It will make them decide, is this for Israel, or it will make them decide, is this for Israel or Iran? So I guess what they're saying is the strategy is to get others involved. And one of the things that has become quite noticeable, in fact, is the splattering of arms right around the Middle East at the moment. And what was the purpose of that? Because it has brought Saudi Arabia and all the other countries in the region into the war. And were they likely to get involved anyway? To what extent will bombing a site in Cyprus, which is a British site, how's that involving the British people? Are they enthralled by that? And the other point too that I think you and I should discuss, and I'd really like to know what your point of view is around this, is whether or not Anthony Albanese and other countries have made a strong enough stand about the illegitimacy of this particular war. Have you got some views on that?
Well, I think Albanese said he supports a lot of it, doesn't he? I know he's in a difficult position because you got to stay on Donald Trump's good side. You don't want the US to come after Australia, whatever that would probably be more economic than military. But I think Albanese seems to be trying to toe that line of not getting Trump on his bad side, but also recognizing I haven't seen any Australian polls on it. I know I saw a poll with the US, only 25% are in support of what Trump is doing, and he's just responded to that saying he doesn't care about polls, and he's on the way out politically and in terms of life, so he probably really doesn't care about polls. But I think Albanese does in Australia, and I'm pretty sure Australians are largely against it too. I always use my conservative family as like the test in the wind to see where they are. I get the Sky News talking points filtered through them, and they're not even really talking about it. And I think I've said to you before, Tony, and for your audience, is like, I know when the right wing don't agree with something when they don't talk about the topic. Like Dutton I don't think the word Dutton was mentioned all through 2025. So that sort of maybe shows you where Australia is on that. But so Albanese, I think, is stuck in a weird place of like probably personally being against it and knowing Australia is, but also not wanting to annoy the big orange guy in power.
I think one of the interesting things too that has happened is that Steer Karma has come out and said that they've identified it as illegitimate war and contravenes international law. And I think I can't understand why Albanese hasn't done that as well. In fact, I can tell you from most of the comments that I placed in my that I read the other day in a post that I did on Sunday, most of the people there, not most, or a lot of, some, were saying that they voted Labor last election, but are reconsidering that vote now simply because of Albo's non-stance around Donald Trump. And a lot of people make statements about, well, we should withdraw from AUKUS, which is something I've supported for a long, long time. But he seems, I guess he does kind of seem a wee bit wishy-washy around all of this and not actually. And I think there are a lot of people who are really considering, well, okay, we voted for him last time. There wasn't much more that we could do given the Liberal Party. There's even less we can do now. The Liberal Party is almost dead. But does it mean that those people are going to shift to One Nation? Or are they going to shift, as some people are suggesting, Nathan, to the Greens or the Teals? Is that the way that it's going to go? I mean, what's your sense on that?
Well, good timing, Tony. Tomorrow I've got a video on the psychology of Albanese coming out. It's more about Labour.
You suggested he's gay.
Plug for my video. No, look, I'll start on the personal level. Is like I think I've said this, made the joke on your show before, that Albanese, he doesn't have the hateable factor. Again, my conservative family, it's a small sample size, but they don't find the hate they have for him that they did for Daniel Andrews and Jacinta Allen. So as on a personal level, and I think that's probably why he's prime minister, one of the main reasons is everything I've heard is like, he's an agreeable guy. He likes to build consensus. He's definitely moderated over the years. For people who don't know, it was his birthday, and so it was his 63rd birthday yesterday and his 30th year in Parliament. So he got elected in 1996, March 2nd, on his 33rd birthday, and now he's 63. Time, I guess, moderates everyone in terms of like, he's had to build that consensus and get all the competing interests together and get elected twice. The question is, like, I know a lot of people doubt his motives. The far right and the right will say he hates Australia, but it is interesting. I haven't heard that perspective from, maybe you'd call them soft Labor voters. Are they thinking of giving up their support to Labor and to go elsewhere? I do think that's why the independents are rising. I've said this a lot. Like the Teals the Teal independents took a lot of Liberals with them, like Kooyong in Victoria, for example. Monique Ryan cleaned up Josh Frydenberg and derailed his whole career. I believe he's going to come back and try and win that seat back. But there is an undercurrent of Labor people that are going to independents. I don't know the exact percentages. It's not as high as ones going to like right-wing parties, because independents are a really mixed bag. but they're actually a lot more left-leaning than you would think. And so, I mean, that really is the way I've framed it, is through more like the cost of living and the housing and mental health crisis. But this is another crisis, and I don't know if Albanese is a crisis. He's
But
I
isn't
call
it?
him a bit. He's become a bit of a boring centrist.
Yeah, but it's a bit about
He's a
perception
stable.
too.
He emphasizes stability and incrementalism, and I don't know if
Yeah.
that's what people want in times of crisis. They want someone who has the bold politics and will recognize a crisis for what it is and have that sense of urgency. I
I
don't know if
wonder.
Albo has that.
Yeah, I wonder also whether it's like if you watch Sky News, which unfortunately I do, but I do it so that people like you don't have
I do it
to.
through you, Tony, as I've said.
Yeah, but you know their notions around Albo continually is that he's weak, and that's the language they use all the time to describe him. And I thought that this was an opportunity, in fact, for Albo to demonstrate a sort of I don't know, not weakness, but to be able to demonstrate that he has some intestinal fortitude in terms of standing up for what is morally correct. So should we be okay? Let's talk about this, folks. Should we be involved in regime change in other countries? I mean, how would we respond if someone attempted to do that here? We'd be horrified. There was an argument that during the Whitlam era, CIA attempted to do so. I think that's been debunked now. But how would we respond if someone disagreed with our style of government and chose to overturn it? How would we respond if we decided that we were going to take a hammer to AUKUS and tell Donald Trump to get fucked? And he started to attack us and whatever. How would we respond around that? Our sense of sovereignty would be at risk. We wouldn't like it. And we may not like, and this is my point, I'd be interested to know what you think. We do not like what the Ayatollah and the regime represents. We do not like that. It's a horrible, horrible organisation. You can accept that. I'm going to start a bit of a rant now, so just going to go into this. Not going to come back to you in a second, if that's okay. Because one of the confusing issues for me is that we can object to what Iran has done in terms of the slaughtering of people. Now, I had a debate with a guy the other day on my comment section, actually, where I suggested that there were some 30,000 people that have been killed that were opposing the regime in Iran. And he suggested, well, where did you get that information from? Well, no one knows because no one can have access to Iran like they used to or should. But the point was that one side of politics, now I want your response around this, Nathan, one side of politics will say the killing of protesters and whatever is wrong. And that will be the right wing. Yet they don't. There's a disconnect between Iran killing so many thousands of people, however many that might be, and the Israel, the IDF, killing some 60,000 innocent people in Gaza. And you're a psychologist, so I'm only a humble little social worker, mate. But what's the disconnect there? Like what actually is happening, do you think, that would make people see this one side but fail to see the other? Because to me, that is fraught with hypocrisy.
Yeah, well, I should probably put the political view that I take on that is like I'm very strongly anti-war. Like we call it defense spending for a reason. That yes, we have a military, but it's for defense if someone's attacking you, not to be used on other countries to invade. And Donald Trump did change it to it's now called the Department of War instead of the Department of Defense. So there's some 1984 for you. I look at it through like the people. I really think it's possible to separate the people from the government and to have empathy and care for the people of any country. If you're a humanist, you take a humanistic approach. We should have empathy for all people. Now, if there's a government that's evil, sure, there's people in that government who are evil, but that's when those people need to be held accountable. And this is, I guess, the bigger theme of Donald Trump feeling like he can get away with anything. There's been some reports like that's basically how he's talking now. He's like, He sort of just realized that really no one can stop him, so they can do what they want. And look, I'm not an expert on the Middle East and all the relationships between the countries, but what I hear is like this is part of a so-called Greater Israel project. You know, the conflict between Israel and a lot of the surrounding countries goes back really, I mean, thousands of years, I guess. If you want to go back to the Judeo-Christian and Muslim conflicts and all of that, there's obviously the religion thrown in. But I guess that's really the question. Like in terms of just Australia, the country we want to be, I hope that we learn the lesson from the Iraq and Afghanistan wars about interventionism, and that I'd love to see Australia stand on its own and just say we don't want to be a part of that. It's difficult because we are tied to the US. You know, we've talked about that in a previous live stream, that it's not as easy to just stand up to the US and say we're not going to be a part of it. But I think, yeah, I'm seeing some comments on my stream, Tony. People don't hate Albo, but they're disappointed. You know, I think that's probably the weakness of Albo is like that he's going to lean more towards agreeability than maybe say what's really on his mind. Maybe for fear of political retribution.
But why can't a politician? Because okay, can you explain? We'll come back to my original point, Nathan. Can you explain to me from a psychological perspective why a person would see this one version of events, number of people being killed in Iran, and ignore what the IDF have done in Gaza? And before we go on, I do need to say Sandra has given us $5. Thank you very much, Sandra. And I also must say that someone the other day at the end of my feed gave me $50. And if that person's online, I also want to say thank you very much for that as well. Really do appreciate it. So and please subscribe to both our channels and ring the bell for notifications, all that sort of shit. Now, okay, back to the original question. And I'd like to know what some people in the comments section think about this as well. The issue is, why do people see one view wrong and the other one is right? When both, particularly the one in Gaza, is far more horrific in terms of destroying a whole frigging population as they're attempting to do.
Yeah.
What? Do you understand?
It's very complex. Yeah, it's very, I mean, it really comes down to like bias. Like if you're Jewish and were raised in Israel and that's the propaganda that you got, and it's existential for you. Like that's where, you go back to watch the footage of Josh Frydenberg talking at the Bondi, the aftermath of that. There's no doubt that he's genuine in his fears and what he's expressing. And vice versa for if you're Muslim or from a Muslim background, you're going to be more biased towards your group. That's in and out groups. People are biased towards their own groups. Like that's nothing new. But the added layer we have in the modern world is our media eco bubbles and the information and news we get. Because you're sort of, not saying you're implying this, Tony, but like it's almost coming out from the way you frame the question is, do the people who support the IDF even get that information about what's going on in Gaza, let alone what do they think about it? And same with the Iranian process. This is why we're so, and for people, I see people making remarks about my name, the rightist leftist. That's kind of the purpose of what my channel is. I don't think we're all going to hold hands and sing Kumbaya and be best friends. We're a divided world, but I think we're too divided in the sense that it's almost like literally two worlds of information. And so if we can't even agree on the facts anymore, then how are we supposed to agree on the solutions? And so when it comes to like the psychology of protests, I would even, I think you're going a few steps ahead of, do those people even get that information? Or if that information is out there, it's so discredited. Because I've heard from people that really support Israel, they'll just deny the facts about what's happening in Gaza. They'll just deny it. And, for me, it's not, I focus more on economic stuff. So,
I think that's a really good point. And I agree, they do deny it. But these people, they have access to exactly the same information you and I have. Right? Now, I can accept they get caught in their little bubbles. I get caught in my bubble. I'm happy to admit all of that, even though I try and explore other people's bubbles because that's kind of part of my job as a social worker. But, why do they get so trapped that they can't see the hypocrisy about their version of events? I just don't. I guess I just don't understand it. There are people here. I've got this post here. I'll just put it up. which is the politicians should have principles and walk the talk. IDF is shite, Syria was shite, and Iran is shite. No good guys here. And thanks very
I would
much
agree
for
when
that,
you say
Brian.
governments, yes.
And
if they're referring to the governments, yes, maybe the people broadly just want to live their lives like we do. But yeah, the governments are definitely shite.
Yeah. But there are people that run the government. That's the point.
Mm.
But my point is, what does it take? Do we need? I guess the biggest frustration is that I have a specific point of view. I don't expect people to see my point of view. I expect people to understand what I'm saying and accept there may be some credibility in it, as I will theirs. But I want to also know, why do you think the way you do? What informs you in your particular bubble that prevents you from seeing another person's perspective, not necessarily agreeing with them, but understanding? To me, I'm not going to labour this point much further because it gives me the shits. But on one side, 60,000, the other side, maybe 30,000, whatever it is. 30,000 is horrible if you're on the right-hand side. 60,000 is acceptable if you're on is also acceptable if you're on the right-hand side, but not acceptable if you're on the left or progressive.
Do you want me to give you the 60-second rundown on what I think?
Go for it, man. I'm anxious.
I think
I'm sorry.
emotional.
I'm sorry, mate. I'm just so
You're right. I
desperate
get
for a
frustrated with this
solution
too.
here.
Data, you can look at one second, Tony. Hello.
Yeah, child has been interrupted. So babysitting duties.
I got my daughter's just jumped in.
All right. So while we'll get back to Nathan in a second while he deals with his family. Fair enough. But I'm just wondering what you. So just. Oh, you're back. Okay. So I was just going to go to some responses, but anyway, back to that question, mate.
Yeah. So it's an emotional. So just think of it like this. Let's put ourselves in the shoes of someone that was born and raised in Israel, and learned about the Holocaust and the atrocities of all of that. And then, you could say indoctrinated. I'll just say, that was their information given to them. It's an emotional barrier to cross to accept what's happening right now with what their country and their army has done. And you're talking about data, like the numbers. And I've known this for years, but I'm really learning it in the political conversations is you're just meeting emotions and fears and things like that with data doesn't work because for them to have to admit that number and what their country has done, and vice versa from, like Muslims and Islam and certain factions of that are not innocent too, in terms of, the October 7th attacks. It's like, it's not about who's right or wrong. We could say who's more wrong in terms of the data, but to psychologically admit what your people have done to another people, especially given to what happened to your people, is a huge psychological hurdle that I think they're just not willing to overcome. So they filter it out. And it's really sad because people like you and me, and again, 99% of your audience, we can see it, and we can see it in live. It's being live streamed now. We're not going to, but we could bring up images of dead, blown up people in Gaza, and it's horrible. And this is why I'm anti-war, because I don't want anyone killed like that. But I'm also not naive that humanity is largely cruel, and these land religious disputes have gone on for thousands of years. So I'm not ignorant about all of that. But yeah, the psychological question of why does showing them facts and data about what their people have done, they can't. A lot of them can. Let's be fair too. A lot of Jewish people, progressive Jewish people, there's a few organizations in Australia and around the world that have spoken against it and are outraged. Yeah, so I'm not speaking in a monolith of all Jewish people. But your question about why do some people filter that out? Emotions.
Yeah. So and on this very point, DJ's just raised there's many Jewish people.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and I want to highlight
these are
not speaking in a monolith.
As you were saying before, these are also people that grew up with understanding the history of the Holocaust and living in Israel, and these are the people that I guess they're the ones that can see the other side of the picture as well. They're not totally indoctrinated, but certain groups of people regretfully are indoctrinated in this. And you still haven't answered the question, Nathan. I'd hate to put you on the spot. But why can't people see the hypocrisy of some of the decisions
They don't want
that they
to,
make?
Tony. I think I did answer it.
That's
They
probably
they
it.
can't.
Thank you.
They psychological. That's what I'm saying, Tony.
I'm
We
satisfied.
can see it because we if you take a humanity at first approach, you don't divide. This is what we were trying to explain to our friend who I'm not reading the comments today, but people who want to divide people up by race and religion and stuff
Yeah,
will
Danielle,
then
that
start
was
othering
Danielle.
and ranking people on their humanity and their
Yeah.
worth. If you take
Yeah.
a human first approach, you don't divide people up like that. You can
Yeah.
you can still acknowledge there are bad people that do bad things and they should be punished, but you don't divide social groups up like that. You should say that everyone has the right to life, and you shouldn't be
That's
like
it.
who's worse or not. So, but unfortunately, Tony, that's not the way most people think. I think, and that's hard for us to accept. That's a
Well, it's
psychological
funny.
barrier we have to get over.
It's funny. Before
So
you said
it's also
that,
an us problem too.
yeah, and before you said that, that was exactly what I was thinking about the sanctity of life. Is it that people are become so distant from other people's experiences that they don't care? Like, it doesn't matter right across the board how we feel about life in general. If you're if you're living within your own bubble, you care about those people that are also in your bubble, but you don't care about people that women and children in Gaza, and even in Australia, mate, you don't care about women that get killed every week at the hands of their partners. Like, unless it impacts you specifically, it has no relevance whatsoever. Therefore, you can take these kind of partisan views about things like, the hypocrisy of who's killing who.
Yeah, I think there is so many. The thing is, and it's like what we talked about in our conversation, Tony, which it's a inappropriate time to plug my channel again, but a lot of people, especially younger people, my audience is like 35 and below, largely millennial and Gen Z. They're so struggling with the cost of living, finding a job, trying to individuate and move out from their family home and afford to rent and all that, that a lot of these social issues that are, literally across the world aren't as salient or pertinent to their position. But as we talked about, that doesn't mean they're not important. Like literally the cost of petrol is going to go up, a direct economic effect on people that drive cars, and also all the side effects of trucks. The supply chain costs are going to go up because petrol is going up too. So it is an economic issue that affects bread and butter, kitchen table issues for people in Australia. But it is, I think the question is, like, you're sort of like, there's a movie called Zone of Interest, and basically, I don't know if you've seen that movie, but it's like a Holocaust movie. But the Holocaust it's basically like a family that lives right near Auschwitz, and the movie has this like really ominous tone. It's basically just sort of a family living their life, and there's sort of the SS Nazi guards come in and out, but there's this kind of like low rumbling sound throughout the movie. They talk about smells and things, and we as the audience know what's going on. Auschwitz and the Holocaust is going on. But what a lot of people forget is like the German people largely didn't know what was happening at the time. They didn't have the information. It's only till afterwards that they got that information. And then Germany had to deal with the hangover of that. And they're probably an example of a society that actually accepted what they did and tried to make amends. It took a long time. They're still in many ways living with that. But that society turned around in that view. So it's that thing of like, yes, the information, because we have the internet, is out there. And this is something that I've struggled to accept as well, is just because information's there and people can access it doesn't mean that they are. Or if the information's presented to them doesn't mean that they'll accept it. So there's a lot of levels to someone changing their mind. And this is literally a psychological trait called open-mindedness. It's on the Ocean test. This is like one of the big 5 personality traits. A lot of people are low on that trait of open-mindedness and they're closed-minded. And it's more so about what you're open and closed-minded about, because there's the quote, if you open your mind too much, your brain will fall out. So you need to, at the end of the day, have an opinion. We all make decisions and have opinions. But the fact that we're so baffled by the data's there, we know the images are there, the facts are there, and so many people won't accept it. Well, yeah, I don't know what we do as a society about that.
Yeah, and Sandra's raised an interesting point along those lines, I think, which is really about our ignorance in relation to history. So Sandra says, I'm disgusted with people who think all this started on October the 7th, 2023. And she's not wrong. the conflict that's been in the Middle East has been going on for centuries. So, and we do not understand necessarily the history. And I think part of that too is the breeding that occurs in terms of, and the fact that people live and grow up with hatred towards another group of people, because historically it's what their families and their generations have done. And so there's this, you and I might talk about intergenerational trauma, right? In terms of a psychological impact of how one responds to their world. Well, there's also this other thing, I think, isn't there, about intergenerational hatred that sits there for the same reason. It is not grounded in logic, is not grounded in reasonableness, and it's certainly not grounded in empathy. It's just pure hatred, because as a particular group of people, this is what we're supposed to do or feel towards another.
Yeah, and I have a sort of a metaphor that makes it easier to understand, is like if you took it to something that's a little bit more arbitrary, like what footy team you support, that's something that you can kind of choose. And like, they've done psychological tests about this. That's like, if anyone knows the Zimbardo experiment, what they did was they got groups, the participants were either prisoners or prison guards. And it only took, and they had to stop the experiment because it was so psychologically damaging and physically damaging, because what they found was you put people in roles and they will fulfill those roles psychologically, and they'll create tribes just based on arbitrary characteristics. They've even done it with smaller experiments, like they'll have two groups sitting at two different tables, and they'll be like, we'll call you red group and we'll call you green group, and they'll do activities, and over time those groups will form bonds in completely arbitrary ways. It's like, if you carved up the group based on men and women, then that would be a different way to carve it up. So what you're talking about is like, with racism and xenophobia and like these different groups, those are things that they can't change because they're born into those countries or those nationalities. But again, even countries we made up at a point in time. Like, you don't get to choose what country you're from or your skin color and things like that. But it's the psychology is the same, that we as humans are tribal. We want an in and out group because we want to feel safe with our tribe. And we then perceive the out group to be unsafe. And that's how you get these broader problems in society. Can we fix that?
There was I don't know if you ever were aware of the brown and blue eye experiment. That was also about dividing people up into brown and blue eyes, and that one group was prioritized over another. It's just,
it's exactly the same type of experiment. Exactly the same.
But I can tell you one thing. You just made me think of it just then, that I used to work with men who were violent, and also just groups generally where they're dealing with anger issues. But I used to find that if you were able to make a connection between them and their partner in a way that often surprised them, then that empathy was enough to provide some form of change. So I used to do this thing, which I actually wrote an article in, which is in the December the 10th Social Work Journal, 2010 December Social Work Journal, if anybody ever wants to read that crap. But in that, I did talk about the reverse role play, whereby I actually got the male to put a name tag on with their partner's name on it. And then I was able to talk to them as if they were their partner. And it was an extremely successful intervention, I guess. And I guess my point is that if you can get people to understand the other person's perspective at quite a deep emotional level by challenging some of their current views, then you can actually implement change. The problem that we have generally around all of these issues is that we don't speak to Muslim people, we don't speak to Indigenous people, we don't speak to homeless people, we don't speak to people who've got, unless you're you and I, who've got mental well-being issues, we don't speak to women who are escaping domestic violence. So there's this big gap, I think, in the types of conversations we could be engaged in with those people who are experiencing some form of trauma in their lives. And without that information, how can we be empathetic?
Yeah. Well, the concept you're talking about is psychological distance, and
Yeah.
it's not the same as physical distance. And an easy example to understand the difference is you could be psychologically close to someone that's physically distant. Like, let's say you have a relative that lives in another country. You might call them on the phone every day or every week, and you're sharing really deep, important information. So you're psychologically close, even though you're physically distant, and vice versa. You could be sitting right next to someone on the train and be completely psychologically distant in the sense of maybe you're not talking to them. You might not even acknowledge their existence. Like, you both know that you're there next to each other, but there's no psychological closeness. And so the concept you're talking about is because they've also done this with studies. I'd have to look it up, but I think there was one. It was it's about cooperation, and I think they did a similar thing as what I described. Is I believe it was like a school camp, or it was like one of those you had to go to this outdoor place, and it was like tug of war and things like that. And so what they did is they kind of created those tribes, but then in the experiment they try to uncreate them. And what they found brings cooperation between two opposing tribes. For those of you playing at home, you might already know the answer, but it's a common enemy. And so there's kind of this joke. I don't know where the joke came from, but it's like the way to really unite humanity is if aliens actually came. Like, if we had this alien, suddenly if this alien race just came down and started attacking us, we then might stop fighting each other to have a common enemy. So it's still tribalism. It doesn't really solve our human need for being in a tribe. But that kind of what you're saying is reducing psychological distance from people that are often, this is the right wing punching down homeless, domestic violence survivors. And, in my show, I really have to navigate this. This might be for like another time, but I am trying to have some of those people on to talk about them and their experience. Now, I know there's that real risk of like exploitation, confidentiality and privacy issues to interview people like that. But I do think that's one way, is like, rather than making this abstract group of people that we can other or punch down on, show them that they are humans and they're struggling, and close that psychological distance. The difficulty when we talk about countries and races and stuff is at scale, that's really hard to do. Like, you'll hear a lot of those, the tough Aussie blokes, maybe One Nation voters or whatever. Oh, like Raj at the local chicken shop he's not one of them. So he's Indian, but he's not one of the bad ones. You hear that a lot. And the reason is, let's say this Aussie bloke's name is John. John and Raj have low psychological distance. Maybe he's a customer of his, they've gotten to know each other. So John, on one intuitive level, knows they're not all the same because he's peeled one off. But to do that at scale, when you have like Sky News and these newspapers like ramping up the rhetoric about othering, it's really hard. I don't have a large scale solution, but at a small scale, you can reduce. You can bring tribes together by finding another tribe for them to go after, or closing the gap.
You did remind me, though, that on Apple at the moment, there's Lord of the Flies, which
there you go. Yep, classic.
Which is a classic example of the very things that you're talking about. If you want to understand any of that better, but I just wondering whether someone's put this up, which I will put up, which we can discuss, I guess. Most immigrants are more Australian than I am. And I think I had this continual discussion about Australian values, and I don't know whether Australian values. So I'm going to talk. We need to talk a bit about One Nation and where they're at. So we're just going to pivot to that in a moment. But
perfect.
I don't know what you. Beg pardon?
Tribalism 101.
Tribalism
One Nation supporter.
Yeah, well, maybe it's a segue into One Nation, but I'll be asking your opinion of that in just a second. But there's this notion around Australian values. What do they represent? I did a post on that last week, trying to work out for myself, I guess, what do people mean by Australian values? How are they implemented? And when a politician says and talks about Australian values, what are they really actually talking about when they're not talking about specifically what those values are? That's the sort of dilemma I think a lot of people find they're in. But, most immigrants are more Australian than I am. It cracks me up. I don't know whether it cracks you up because you don't believe in the fact that immigrants are more Australian. And, what does being more Australian actually mean, given that in one form or another, we're all bloody immigrants unless we're First Nations people. So yeah, I'm a bit curious by that. But okay, keep the comments going. We've had heaps and heaps of them. But I just wanted to switch now. Hate to put you on the spot again, mate, but that's why you're here. Don't forget that.
I love it.
Is this the trend towards one nation, whom I think who I'm going to put it in the politest way I can, I don't think have anything to offer that's substantial at all. But there again, I don't think the Liberal Party do either. And I guess governments do because they're implementing their program and whatever that might be. And one could argue that Albanese and his government are doing that to the best of their ability. Could be doing more, could be far more progressive. Get all of that. But, and maybe there's a bit of hubris happening for the government. Don't know that either. But in terms of one nation, what do you think seems to be the general attraction? Is it they're turning off two-party politics? Is it that the Liberal Party is so much on the nose that they're just saying bugger off? Or they're just saying to the Nationals, we're not interested in you anymore. What do you think is the motivation around all of that?
Yeah, I'm studying this closely, and there is an open invitation. If any of your viewers, anyone watching this stream, is a One Nation supporter, jump over. My email is in my channel description, so sign on to my channel and send me an email, and we can have a 1 hour chat about maybe you've jumped to One Nation, or you've always been a One Nation supporter. I'd love to talk to you, because I will answer this seriously. I'm not gonna, poke fun because I'm taking it seriously. There's a big frustration at politics as usual and business as usual. Clearly most of the One Nation supports come from the Liberal National Party. The perception that they're, with Susan Lee in particular, were not differentiating themselves enough from Albanese and the Labor Party in the way they would like. There is a small contingent of Labor supporters and independents that are moving over to One Nation. So there could be this sort of like people finding a tribe. They felt a bit politically homeless. They're frustrated. Let's be honest, it's when you break it down demographically, it's more people out in outer suburbs and rural areas, and people over, I think, 55 vote more towards One Nation than people under 55. And they have, I would say, genuine grievances about certain things. The Labor Party doesn't help themselves with their really poor marketing. Their YouTube channel, their official YouTube channel hasn't posted a video for 9 months or a short for 4 months. So we're like 3 months into 2026 and they've pumped zero content out on their main channel. And I can then see why a One Nation supporter might go, yeah, well, what's Labor doing? I'm actually, in the last year with this channel, I'm not a Labor member or supporter. I don't know. I genuinely don't know who I'm going to vote for in the next election. We've got a Victorian state election coming up in November. I don't know who I'm going to vote for in my area. But so I understand that feeling of political homelessness. And if you have a tribe that appeals to you, I can see the appeal. And let me just talk about their big policy, right? Immigration. Because people say One Nation are thin on policy. I love your quote, Tony, about I've seen their policies and their shit. I think the official, so One Nation voters, if you're in the chat, correct me if I'm wrong. My understanding is One Nation's official policy on immigration is they want net overseas migration, which is, all the people coming in and subtract all the people that leave. So that's like every year, the amount of people that come into Australia overall, you take away the people that do, because we do have emigration, like people leave Australia. So you subtract that from the people coming in, and that's your overseas. One Nation's number is about 135,000. So they don't want zero and they don't want negative. They don't want mass deportation necessarily. This is what I'm being told. They want 135,000. Now, here's the rightist leftist. Here's where I might surprise people. I do think immigration needs to come down. It spiked after COVID because we had a lot of people leave, and the economy is so tied to immigration with international students, regional doctors. Regional areas need immigrants because, let's be honest, white Aussies aren't going to be doing those jobs. They just aren't. There's a shortage of doctors in regional areas, and there's incentives to make, and I know this through experience, people that I know, they kind of incentivize them to go rurally and work out in like regional clinics and things like that. The way they do it is basically, if you want your visa, you go do that. So it's not so this is, again, so now I'll hold the One Nation people accountable. Our economy is so tied to immigration. If you're talking about reducing immigration or certain types of immigrants, we really need to get into the weeds of what that actually means. Because I understand that immigration is too high and I think it should be brought down, but it needs to be in a humane way. We can't just be turning away people for certain characteristics. I think we can have an open conversation. I do understand that Labor does seem a bit closed off to that discussion for whatever reason. But again, I think there's some genuine concerns and grievances in the community, and people are finding their political home in One Nation. And, we will see in the South Australian election if that grievance and that polling turns into votes and seats.
I think I agree with most of what you're saying. The only issue I think I have is that no one really knows what that number should be. That the net migration figure, according to the Labor Party and the government now, is about 178,000, I think. So it's not, and someone might correct me on that, but that was the figure that comes to mind. So I don't know whether or not, and is migration kind of random? Like, do we just send out a please come card or please visit us card, and people just flock into our country as a result?
Can I point on that, Tony? Yeah. I'm not reading your comments, so I don't know if someone said this, but this is actually where Australia is very different to the US, because I've heard some people say, we don't know that Australia, because we're an island and we've stopped the boats, we know our immigration numbers because people can only come to Australia really by plane. Yeah. They can come by boats, but and at this point, it's like human trafficking through Indonesia and stuff has stopped. So it's really like we can get our immigration numbers pretty accurate. And you're right. Like if it's one, I thought it was a little higher than what you quoted then, but really that's what I'm sort of saying is is this really what we do to count to One Nation? If their policy is 135,000 overseas, do we just have to tell One Nation voters, Pauline isn't going to do like a US ICE. She actually wants migration just a little lower than Labor. And does Labor just need to go, okay, we'll lower it to that number, vote for us. I would support that number. I think 135,000 is sustainable. It is unsustainable. I live in an area where there's a lot of housing being built. And look, I'm not blaming the immigrants. I know they just want to come over and, talking about Australian values, they want the Australian dream of having a home and a family and a safe community, largely. That's what they want. So they will come if we allow them in. And so to lower that number to a sustainable level is totally reasonable. But I think some One Nation supporters are like, deport them all, bring it into the negative. But what my understanding is Pauline's not for that. So do we divide and conquer and explain to them that's actually what the policy is? Or do we, keep pushing to actually get it in writing? What does Pauline actually want? The psychology of Pauline, that's a 5-hour video, Tony.
I just want to bring this post up, and I want to thank this person too, who has donated $10 to the cause. Just post more, where the bloody hell are your ads to drop immigration? And I think also what they're saying is, the justification for dropping immigration as well. Like, how do you see it? Because I know, I read, and I haven't got it up here at the moment, but I counted on my tabs across my Chrome for quite some time, which is the immigration side, and to look at the reasons why. I did it when I did this post on values, like what are the values, because the people have to sign an agreement, I guess, of some sort, saying, I agree with these certain values, and a fair go is one of those values, whatever that might mean. But there is certainly, and I know that there is certain criteria. In fact, my son works in an area where he is responsible for, or his organisation, I should say, not him, are responsible for people from the technical industry, from the computer industry, programmers and others, to come into this country, and they set the standard for that. So, and I know that there's a whole range of these different standards that are required before people even come to the country. Now, we're in a bit of a quandary, really, because we've got, on one hand, we need people to come into this country to build those houses that we talk about. But then we don't want those, apparently, some people don't want those people to come into Australia to build those houses, because that's more immigrants to Australia who consume houses. And we do need to remind people that the percentage of people that come into Australia in terms of the housing issue is only about 4%. So it's not massive And then we've got the other issue, Nathan, around infrastructure. So for some reason, there's 170,000, 200,000, whatever it is, people that come into Australia, causing incredible congestion on our streets. So, and what I sense more than anything else is that this is more about fear than practical applications, whereby we require people to come to this country because we need to fix some of the problems that we have in terms of housing, medical practitioners, psychologists, social workers. We need to find ways to fill those gaps, because the reality is, and people don't talk about this very much, people like me are dying out. Our generation is going. We're buying. Well, I hope I'm not. but we're buying, which I'll be doing at some point, a mobile home, and we're just traipsing around Australia, spending our money if we have any, if we're lucky enough to have any. So those gaps need to be filled. And I think that is where the conversation is lacking. We're not talking enough about the reasons why immigration is important, number one, where it's important, number two, and number three, that we just don't let any Tom, Dick and Harry come into this country. Have you?
And
got
we don't.
thoughts
That's
on that?
the thing. Yeah. Well, look, let's just say like the biggest categories of immigrants are international students and skilled workers. And I know I work at one of the unis, so I know the international student experience and demographic very well. They work often multiple jobs. They pay tax. To be an international student, you have to pay the fees up front. So they're often from wealthier families who pour money into the country. I don't know the exact number, but I know, education is one of our top 5 exports. Most of it is minerals and iron ore and all of that, but education is up there.
Yep.
And the skilled workers, like, as we said, like you said, construction, healthcare, hospitality, cleaning, so many industries have Uber drivers, all of that stuff. The gig workers and all of that are often immigrants that have come here because, let's be honest, a lot of white Aussies like myself, we're not going to be doing those jobs. We're also, our birth rates are declining too, which is a whole other thing. So, because think about it like this, we had negative net overseas migration for one quarter. The quarter was 2020, first quarter of 2020 when we went into lockdown. So many of those immigrants, international people, students instead, we can't afford this. A lot of us don't get the benefits, even though people think that they only get the benefits once they become a permanent resident. And we have immigrants often living here for many years before they actually get government benefits. They went, nah, we're going home. What happened? So who was in power then? Scott Morrison from the Liberal Party. How long were they in power? The Liberals had 9 years. They were in from 2013 to 2020. They could have lowered immigration and done something about it. But what happened when we had the one period where it was negative? They panicked. They absolutely panicked. And the way I know they panicked is because my partner at the time was an immigrant and trying to get the visa process. And I got approved like almost instantaneously when we'd heard stories that you're going to be waiting months. So the government just went on this like binge of approving immigrants because they were going out, because our economy is so tied to it. And that's the thing I think we need to talk. And when I say we talking to One Nation voters, I don't think they understand. Yes, it's fear, outrage, hype about all of this. They just want them out, but it doesn't work like that. It just doesn't work like that. Our economy is so tied to it that it'll be a disaster for our economy if we had negative migration.
And someone
you can have a problem with that, but that's just a fact.
And we can't take any more people until we have proper town planners. Well, I don't know where town planners are coming from. I don't know what that notion's about. And
I agree with that comment.
But are we not training enough town planners? Is that? I'm happy to accept that. I'm not going to dispute it.
But this is where I think I'm going to assume this person has good intent. Infrastructure is a whole other problem. Like Australia having poor infrastructure. I mean, if we didn't have immigrants, as you said, Tony, in construction, then we'd have even worse infrastructure. So it's a two-way street. That's the difficulty.
I think they're saying here
it's so integrated. You can't just get rid of the migrants and keep a good economy. It doesn't work like that.
No, it would be the demise of our economy as it is right now if we chose to abolish any form of immigration whatsoever, and particularly in our farming industry for all those British people that come to Australia to pick crops and do all those nasty things that most of us don't want to do. But just in terms of this particular post, I do thank S. Smith for that. So town planners and infrastructure in place. Now, I don't think any of us are going to argue necessarily that we shouldn't improve our infrastructure. I was just watching, which I do, oddly enough, Question Time today, and they were talking about the infrastructure planning in Australia, and there is a lot, billions and billions of dollars are being spent. So it isn't like nothing's being done, but I would argue that little had been done for a long time, and we're now into catch-up mode in terms of our infrastructure. And I think the Vic Rail thing has just taken shape. And there's something in New South Wales. Is that right?
I don't know New South Wales, but in Victoria, the big build has completed a lot of projects. The right wing again are trying to. There was the CFMEU union had a corruption scandal, so they're trying to take away the good news of all that being delivered. But you're right. I mean, like on this, what's One Nation's infrastructure plan? I haven't seen that. The only thing I've seen around that is take off the GST for construction supplies like wood and timber and stuff like that. So, look, that'll lower the cost of building a house a little bit. But I haven't seen Pauline Hanson's One Nation infrastructure plan for Australia. So,
yeah, and this is, I guess, this is our point. The other point there is that we'll end up crammed onto trains like they do in India, and I think they're valid points, right? But this is the fear. The question we really need to be asking around some of this stuff: are these issues being addressed? That's the question. Yes, I think they are. Maybe they're not being addressed in the way all of us would like. We are not China. We can't build a city in a weekend. We have limitations towards our abilities. But certainly I know that money's being spent on those issues as we speak. But are they fast enough? Are we aware of of those efforts to be able to improve infrastructure? I don't know. But it's a fair question, nevertheless. But then I think it feeds into this notion of fear. Are we fearful that things are not being done fast enough? Are we fearful that people are going to take our jobs? Are we fearful that that there isn't enough housing for people? So rather than looking at the fear, maybe we need to start looking at what solutions are being provided, because some are. Maybe not fast enough, maybe not the time frame that we want. And also we need to say, as you were saying, Nathan, look at what the parties are offering around all of those questions and then decide which one offers the best solution given their policies. One Nation don't have any policies. So on that issue, I just want to turn to One Nation for a moment. And Pauline Hanson's response to the notion that all Muslims are bad people. What's your response to that?
And she partially retracted it, didn't she?
Partially.
I think she
partly apologise.
That's why I said I'd love, for all the husbands that are watching, imagine issuing a partial apology to your wife. How that would go down.
Yeah.
That's such an absurd idea. I issue a partial apology. Have you ever issued a partial apology, Tony?
Beg your pardon?
Have you ever issued a partial apology to your wife?
No such thing.
How would that go down?
Not very well. Not very well. So I only apologise for part of the nasty thing I've said to you.
Exactly. That's right.
Yeah, I just want to take you to this particular issue, which is Hanson censured over no good Muslims comment. Coalition votes against it. So the Parliament decided to take an issue with this. The Coalition has refused to support a motion censuring One Nation leader Pauline Hanson for suggesting that there are no good Muslims, arguing such a sanction should not be routinely used by public commentary. Two Liberal senators crossed the floor and voted with Labor and the Greens to pass the motion, including Paul Scar, who was originally dumped from the opposition front bench. Now, the issue for me around this is that, meant to go here. The issue for me around this, Nathan, is that the sanction means bugger all. It just means we say you're a naughty person and we're going to slap you across the wrist. Do you believe that more should be done to reprimand her? And does it sit on this this notion around how can I put it, hate speech.
Yeah. This is where I have kind of two different streams of thought. On one hand, I kind of agree with you, like parliamentary procedure, I don't care about. It seems to me just a real big distraction. Like, like let's just take literally the last topic we're talking about. Why can't they be debating infrastructure? And why can't Pauline be putting forward her infrastructure plan and policy that
Fair
apparently
comment.
is on their website?
Yeah.
Like, why can't she talk about that? It's the sale again. It's such a emotionally charged topic that it gets the attention. Again, I'm pretty libertarian on free speech. Like, if she broke rules of parliament, sure, then censure her. But again, we know what anti-establishment people respond with that. Like with Trump in his mugshot, it's just going to embolden her. It's like the way you treat bullies. Give them, attention seeking. You're giving them the fuel. And I know Labor try to act like the adults in the room and they'll follow the procedure and all of that. But I think just in terms of, look, again, I'm more interested in talking to One Nation voters than, I would love to talk to Pauline. But in terms of just this political movement, her being censured emboldens that. So, sure, do it, because if that's what the rules are, do it. But no, marketing and perception wise, that's going to strengthen her brand, that she's anti-establishment. Look at them telling me to shut up and all of that. So, you've got the procedural angle, which sure, whatever. I really don't care. And then the marketing political angle that's going to help her with her, again, not with everyone in Australia, but it's going to strengthen her anti-establishment base who love that.
And I just want to take us to one before we go, because we've got to go shortly. Firstly, I put my email address in the feed a little earlier. And I just suggest people, if you want to contact me, if you want to have a conversation with me, you can do so via my email. And also, if you want to come online and talk to Nathan and myself about the issues that matter to you, please email me. And I'm sure Nathan and I would be happy to have that conversation with you at some particular point about anything. Your views in particular are important to us. I just before we go, just wanted to zap in to this. Hanson wants referendum to avoid hate speech laws. One Nation leader, Pauline Hanson, says she will push for a referendum to create a right to free speech that would make it harder for her widely condemned remarks about Muslims to fall foul of the law. The anti-immigration populist party has used online posts recently to falsely claim Labor's post-Bondi hate crimes laws were being used by political elites, the poor thing, I do feel for her, to jail her over a statement that there was no good Muslim, directing supporters to a webpage to sign up as One Nation members.
There's the motivation, right?
That's it. Yeah, it was all just revealed. We want to be able to stir this up so that we get more people and more money, and Pauline Hanson can live in a bigger house on her farm. That's it.
Yeah, and what your viewers, maybe we can end on this from my point of view, and I'm sure your viewers who are well informed would know, but anyone who doesn't, Gina Rinehart, who was funding the Liberal Party and Peter Dutton last election, didn't quite, she's Australia's richest person, worth nearly 40 billion, didn't quite work out for her, so now she's funding Pauline Hanson, flying her around to her mines to Thailand, Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago they've gone to a couple of times. So Pauline's getting some big money in. And for any One Nation voters who are working people, look into their laws around industrial rights, the right to disconnect, overtime. Pauline votes against workers' rights 100% of the time, if she ever shows up. Her voting attendance is 52%.
Yeah.
So she misses half the votes.
I actually Googled it to find out what it was.
You get kicked out of school if that was a school attendance record. So she's missing in action. I don't know about the money. In terms of the money, I know she wants One Nation to be well funded to win. I think Pauline's, again, I'd love to chat with her. Pauline, come on. I'm sure you're watching. You've got your bot accounts out there anyway, commenting on the thing. But I don't know if money's her real thing. I think it's attention and she's an agitator. I saw some people comment, she's a bit like Nigel Farage, but definitely like Trump. She's that right-wing agitator. And in times of crisis, people look for alternatives, and that message resonates. Because if Labor are not putting forward what they're doing and really highlighting that day in and day out, if they keep their hands off the wheel of controlling the narrative, a right-wing agitator is going to do what they do. So I don't get surprised by this stuff anymore. With Donald Trump invading Iran, to take it back to circle it back to the start. I don't get surprised. I get disappointed, but I don't get surprised because they want to grab the headlines. For them, if they're not in the headlines, that's the worst thing.
Yeah.
Pauline loves this attention. She loves it.
Yeah. Spot on.
And she wants One Nation to do well. And I don't know if I agree.
So stay online. I'll talk to you when we go off here. So stay there.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you again,
the chat.
Nathan. It's been absolutely amazing. I really do appreciate it. And I just want to say in closing, please remember to subscribe to both my channel and to Nathan's channel as well. And remember that on Thursday, I do a live feed with Avery. So look forward to catching up with you all then. And I want to thank John. John's given us $7.99. Thanks, mate. Really do appreciate that. And all of you that have contributed, I really do appreciate it. It does help out. We don't get paid. We get paid bugger all, if anything, from YouTube. This is because we do it, both Nathan and I, because it's a community service and it's something that should be done, and it's an opportunity to build a community such as the one both of us have, to have conversations with you about the things that matter to you as well. So thanks everybody for being here. Really do appreciate it. And before we go, I just need to check something else. Yeah, I see that. Thank you very much. So thanks everybody for being a part of the Tony Tonkin Show and this conversation with Nathan. Again, remember to go over to his channel, help him out so he can be monetized by the paltry amount that YouTube pay. I'm sure he will love to know that his kid. It's a milestone worth making, I think. So help him out there and help me out as well. So I just want to say thanks everybody for being here. Take care and look after yourselves.